Trustee Baker. Here. Trustee Dodd.
Here.
Trustee Kishinev.
Here.
Trustee DeLuna.
She's late. She's on her way.
Trustee Rios.
Here.
Student trustee Gonzalez. Here. Trustee Olson.
Here.
And trustee Everson.
Here.
Thank you.
Thank you. Catherine, next let's do Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Amen. You, Jason. Next is our land acknowledgement. As we gather today, it is important to acknowledge that Napa Valley College and the surrounding Napa Valley sit on the unceded, traditional, ancestral, and contemporary homelands of the Miwok, Patwin, who are comprised of three federally recognized tribes: the Kashudihi Band of Winton Indians of the Calusa Indian Community, the Quechua-Dehi Band of Winton Indians, and the Yocha-Dehi Winton Nation in Wapo, including the Mishwa-Wapo, also known as the Onastasi peoples. As part of Napa Valley College mission of transforming lives through excellent educational and professional opportunities that are student-centered, equity-focused, and community-oriented, and in accordance with the college's values of accountability, integrity, inclusion, respect, social justice, and sustainability, we make this acknowledgement. We also affirm that this acknowledgement is insufficient. It does not undo the harm that has been and continues to be perpetrated against Indigenous people, the land and water. May we hold steady in our commitment to be in solidarity and in action to seek equity and justice with the Miwok, Patwin, and Wapo peoples. And next we'll move to 2.4. This is adoption of the agenda. Do we have any changes to the agenda?
I would like to pull from the consent calendar 7.10.
Okay. Pull that when we get to the consent calendar, 7.10 on the consent. But thank you for the heads up on that, Trustee Kishinev. So I had a motion by Trustee Baker. Do I have a second for adoption? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Trustee Baker, motion. Trustee Olson seconded. Thank you. Okay. At this point, we are going to go through our employee discipline release matter. So board president, good afternoon. The board properly placed the matter on today's closed session agenda for public employee discipline dismissal release pursuant to the Brown Act at Government Code Section 54957, subdivision B1. Also pursuant to the Brown Act, Government Code Section 54957, subdivision B, section 2, the employee was given notice that this matter had been placed on the closed session agenda of a regular meeting scheduled for today, and an opportunity to request that the matter instead be heard in open session during the time period on the agenda dedicated to open meeting, public comment on closed session items. I have been informed that the employee is requesting that the matter be heard in open session. Mr. Portman, is that correct? Thank you. In the event that the matter will be heard at this time. So before we begin, I'm going to take a few moments to explain the process that we will use to conduct this open session item. Under the Brown Act, an employee may request that complaints and charges be heard in open session. When such a request is made, we are required to hear in open session the complaints or charges that we would otherwise have heard in closed session. The board is considering the recommendation of the adjustment board under the collective bargaining agreement. The board is free to accept reject, or modify the recommendation. Therefore, we will hear from Amy Brandt, the district's counsel, on the factual basis and procedural background of the district's recommendation and the district's position. The employee will then have an opportunity to speak. That will end the public consideration of the charges. Any members of the public who wish to speak in this matter may then speak, subject to the board's usual procedures for hearing public comment. After public comment, the board will move to closed session for deliberations. The board will make its decision in closed session. Lastly, the board has received and had the opportunity to review the following information: the adjustment board decision, the notice of termination, the briefs of both parties and exhibits, and the transcript of the hearing. We will not be hearing evidence this afternoon, but considering the decision of the adjustment board. So at this point, Ms. Brand, would you please proceed with the procedural background and district's position?
Good evening. So in terms of the factual and procedural background in this matter, so on June 10th, 2022, the Napa Valley College, as you all know, was the victim of a ransomware cyber attack. Computers, phones, the internet, all electronic systems were down. Students and staff were unable to access their district email or any of their online accounts. All the information systems were frozen from a technological standpoint. The college had received a ransom letter making demands in exchange for its systems back. It was one of, if not the most vulnerable moments in the college's history. That Friday and over the weekend, campus leadership began to work and understand the issues with working with various state and federal law enforcement agencies, understanding what exactly happened, identifying which systems were compromised, and trying to figure out how it would conduct business, including registration, without access to the district's normal systems. Part of this included assessing the IT systems, developing a communication strategy, and student outreach and support. On June 13th, 2022, that Monday, Dean Jessica Erickson delivered a set of talking points to her team in the Enrollment and Welcome Center. These talking points were at the direction of her supervisor. They had been vetted and were essential for consistent messaging to the public and to students. Then Vice President of Student Affairs, Oscar DeHaro, and Dr. Alejandro Guerrero asked Dean Erickson to deliver the message to other departments on campus, including the IT department, so that they could use the same message and support the inevitable inquiries that would come in that day. When the three administrators arrived at the IT department, staff were there and aware of the situation. The intention was to direct IT staff to assist students and members of the public who had questions and were having issues with technology, and to deliver those talking points designed to avoid the mass spread of panic about the ransomware attack. Instead, the administrators were met with anger and hostility in the form of yelling from Mr. Poorman. He yelled at, he heckled, and blamed others, including Mr. DeHaro and Dean Erickson, during their attempt to present the talking points. He behaved in an aggressive manner and a hostile manner and told Mr. DeHaro that they could take their argument outside. He defiantly refused to follow instructions, refused to deliver the talking points, claiming that helping at the Welcome Center would be a waste of his time. Following the incident, former interim superintendent President Frost directed that Mr. Poorman be placed on an administrative leave that day. The district subsequently conducted an investigation. As part of the investigation, Vice President Albaron met with Mr. Poorman and his union representative, Casey Thompson, to discuss the incident. During the meeting, Poorman stated that he told Oscar DeHaro something to the effect of, "We can take this outside," during their exchange. After the investigation concluded, the district served Mr. Poorman with a notice of intent to terminate. After the required due process, including his Skelly hearing, the district moved forward with the termination. Mr. Poorman requested a hearing with the adjustment board pursuant to the collective bargaining agreement. After selecting an adjustment board as provided in the CBA and scheduling the hearing, the matter was ultimately heard on April 25th, 2024. Parties received a transcript and each side submitted post-hearing briefs. The adjustment board issued its recommendation to this board on July 11th, 2024. The adjustment board's recommendation was not unanimous and included a dissent from one of the adjustment board members. And tonight, the Board of Trustees is considering that recommendation. So in terms of the district's position, it's important to make sure everyone understands that in the moment of the district's highest vulnerability, Mr. Poorman acted volatilely and aggressively and refused to follow the instructions or support his department in the college. This moment was the single most significant threat that the district had ever experienced. This moment required that the district staff, especially IT, focus and execute their jobs and take directions in a calm and disciplined fashion. It required staff across all departments to work collaboratively and efficiently as they had no access to their basic tools like computers and the internet. Mr. Poorman's conduct that morning left his coworkers and administrators feeling scared of what he might do next, feeling threatened and intimidated, feeling like they couldn't trust him with sensitive information, which includes confidential student and employee data and access to information infrastructures and servers. Feeling like Mr. Poorman is comfortable blaming his coworkers and supervisors in difficult situations rather than collaborating. Feeling like Mr. Poorman was disruptive to the work environment and to the work culture, and that continuing to work with Mr. Poorman would be unsafe. Mr. Poorman's emboldened decision to challenge Mr. DeHaro to take it outside is important. Violence and escalation is never acceptable during a disagreement in the workplace. The incident demonstrated Mr. Poorman does not have the temperament or level-headedness to work on a team, and that it would be detrimental to the college to allow his behavior to remain on campus. Mr. Poorman's actions demonstrated his tendency to jump to conclusions and constantly assume that he knows what's going on even without investigating the situation. He admitted that he didn't know what the administrators he knew, yet was already aggressive and hostile towards them without even listening. His actions demonstrated his comfort with being insubordinate whenever he disagrees with a supervisor or manager's instructions. This isn't acceptable in any workplace, and certainly not appropriate during a crisis. There are critical issues with the adjustment board's recommendation. First, the adjustment board's recommendation did not place Mr. Poorman's conduct within the necessary context. His outbursts and threats occurred during the most significant systemic crisis the district had experienced. This wasn't an average day at the college where a disagreement just became heated. The recommendation also fails to address the likelihood that Mr. Poorman would repeat this type of conduct. At the hearing, Mr. Poorman testified that he would repeat his refusal to follow directives from his supervisor in the future if he didn't agree with them. He stood by his rejection of the talking points and his refusal to deliver the message that he didn't agree with, despite the fact that he knew at that time he didn't know all the information about the situation. This intentional and likely repeated insubordination was not addressed at all in the adjustment board's recommendation, but it's a critical reason that Mr. Poorman should not return to the college. Further, while the recommendation indicates that Mr. Poorman acknowledged that he needed to work on his communication, it failed to recognize that he never expressed remorse for his conduct until the hearing with the adjustment board. In fact, Mr. Poorman changed his story at the hearing. For the very first time, Mr. Poorman claimed that he apologized to administrators during the exchange in the IT office that morning. No witnesses, including Mr. Poorman, reported that alleged apology at any time prior. And Mr. Poorman never indicated that he was sorry or remorseful for his behavior towards any of the people that he was speaking to or threatening. Instead, up until the hearing, he continued his position that he was not disrespectful or disruptive. Further, the recommendation from the arbitrator erroneously focuses on the fact that the district's investigation into the incident was not conducted immediately and that not all the eyewitnesses were interviewed during the course of the investigation. First, The investigation was delayed because the district needed all hands on deck to sustain operations and then recover from the ransomware attack. Many projects across this district had to be postponed until employees were able to recover information and systems. Once the crisis had leveled off, HR proceeded with the investigation. Second, despite the arbitrator's claim that the omission of Mr. Portman's girlfriend from the investigation affected its thoroughness, the arbitrator also articulated that the concept of just cause and discipline doesn't require an employer investigating wrongdoing to interview every single available witness. Investigators have broad authority and autonomy to interview witnesses as they determine, and that's what occurred in this investigation. The recommendation also doesn't take seriously the fact that every single hearing witness besides his own girlfriend testified that they would feel uncomfortable and unsafe if they had to work with Mr. Portman again. The arbitrator's recommendation also relies far too heavily on the fact that Mr. Portman had no prior discipline. Mr. Portman had only worked for the district since 2019 before this 2022 incident. He was not a long-term employee that had a perfect record, rather a newer employee who still felt it was appropriate to yell at and intimidate administrators. The collective bargaining agreement does not require lockstep progressive discipline, especially when the conduct, like here, warrants otherwise. The arbitrator's own recommendation, however, concluded that the district did meet its burden of proof and showed that Mr. Portman violated the collective bargaining agreement by engaging in discourteous, offensive, disruptive, or abusive conduct. The arbitrator's recommendation of a 30-day unpaid suspension supports what a serious incident this was. The egregious acts of Mr. Portman make it appropriate and necessary to terminate his employment. We respectfully urge that the board uphold the decision to terminate Mr. Portman.
Thank you, Mrs. Brandt. Mr. Portman, would you like to address the board? And yeah, Mr. Portman, if Casey is your representative, you can speak as well.
Portman does have a separate statement he would like to make as well, but I just want to go over the facts of the case, which I'm sure that this board has all had chance to review. So there are several things that the adjustment panel found, right? Firstly, the investigation was found to be inadequate under the 7 tests for just cause due to the omission of testimony from a key eyewitness who was present in the room, Sheree Marcos. You can find that on page 21 of the findings. On page 22 of the findings, they also found the investigation was unfair due to the omission of Marcos and the inclusion of Daniel Vega, who was not present that day, but whom the district investigator felt might be useful in characterizing Mr. Portman negatively, but who subsequently did not actually testify to the allegation that Mr. Portman threatened anybody with firing in a prior meeting. The evidence did not establish that the conduct was violent or menacing on the part of Mr. Portman. You can find that on page 23. The key here is that, were Mr. Portman to have engaged in physical threats of violence, I don't think there'd be any doubt among the adjustment panel or amongst this board that summary termination would be warranted. However, no one testified to that absent Jessica Erickson. In fact, Oscar DeHaro, in his written account of the events from that day, did not say anything of that sort. He never said that Mr. Portman told him, let's take this outside. And when he was giving oral testimony during the hearing, he similarly never said that. In fact, what he said is that Mr. Portman said that they should talk about this later, and that Mr. DeHaro made a somewhat threatening remark, said, we will, and then some. The arbitrator found that the termination was an unduly harsh discipline. Given the lack of prior discipline, you can find that on page 26. The one dissenting adjustment panel member was the employer representative, Priscilla Mora, but the neutral and experienced arbitrator has made a different recommendation, as you've heard. And we urge the board to adopt that. And I also want to point out that the delay in investigation had nothing to do with the cyber attack, as Ms. Alberon had testified that day, was because she was away from campus on June 13th, which had nothing to do with the cyber attack itself. I know that the district representative wants to make it sound like the seriousness of the cyber attack caused a delay in investigating, but those two are unconnected. And in fact, per Dr. DeHaro's own testimony, the entire interaction between him and Mr. Foreman was about 12 minutes tops. So it did not negatively impact the district's ability to respond timely or effectively to that crisis. There's no doubt that Mr. Foreman did vocalize concerns and criticisms during that meeting, but it's because he's a dedicated worker here for the college, and he really cares about IT security, something that he had raised concerns about in the past. Now, frustration on his part and even criticism of the administration's response to the crisis does not constitute cause for summary termination for an employee with no prior history of discipline. And so, you know, again, SEIU 10-1 is strongly urging the board to accept the recommendation of the adjustment panel as is fair. He has gone through due process. An experienced arbitrator has reviewed the 7 tests for just cause and the facts of the case and has made a recommendation. And we urge you to abide by that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Foreman.
Board of Trustees, thank you for your time and presence. My name is Richard Ryan Foreman, and I'm the Napa Valley College's network specialist. I'd like to address the incident that gave rise to today's proceedings. On June 13th, 2022, I was involved in a discussion with management and coworkers that became contentious. First, I want to apologize for my part in the discussion. I was frustrated and disappointed that day, and while that is no excuse for what transpired, I would like to give you the context surrounding that discussion. As the network specialist, one of my responsibilities is to identify and report security threats to the department and its leadership. This responsibility is critical to the success of the campus and department. As such, I ensured to do so leading up to the cyber attack that occurred June of 2022. I reported these findings to my department and its leadership through daily and weekly email updates and speaking about them at department, board of trustee, and district technology committee meetings. I did so in an effort to bring attention to the severity of the security vulnerabilities that were present and threatening the campus's technology resources. However, many of my suggestions were not taken, and as a result, malicious attackers continued to gain further control into the campus's technology resources, which led to the cyber attack in June of 2022. On the weekend of the June 2022 cyber attack, when I was notified of the attack, my first reaction was to respond and to provide support. However, I was instructed to report on Monday to the Information Technology Department for an update about what occurred. I felt unvalued because I know that I could have provided skills, resources, and experience to respond to the attack. When I arrived on Monday to the department, I had many questions for the department's leadership about the attack. However, the leadership present could not answer them. Instead, my questions were ignored, and I was instructed that we were to report to the Welcome Center to answer phone calls with provided talking points. After reading the talking points, I communicated I did not want to use these talking points while answering calls because they were untrue and lying to the campus. This led to a back and forth communication from all present that I would describe as agitated and unproductive. After this period of tense discussion subsided, I immediately apologized about the discussion that transpired and ensured to communicate that I will be happy to assist with answering calls at the Welcome Center if that's what I was tasked with. After Oscar DeHaro, Jessica Erickson, and Dr. Alejandro Guerrero departed the office, a few minutes passed and Oscar DeHaro returned with Officer Madrigal to notify me that I was placed on administrative leave and required to exit the campus. I was shocked, and I didn't understand how the previous discussion can result in administrative action or the involvement of law enforcement. However, I complied and was escorted from the campus. My time on administrative leave has given me time to reflect and learn from what transpired, improve personally and professionally, and understand to engage everyone with the utmost respect. As a result, I look forward to returning to my role as the Napa Valley College Network Specialist.
Thank you, Mr. Portman. The board may now ask any clarifying questions. Do any board members have questions? And
I have two questions. First question is, was the talking point actually factually correct? That he was asked to repeat? I'd like to know from the college's representative. And was he correct in the warnings that he was giving prior to the hack?
I don't know.
Somewhere?
That wasn't investigated in terms of what warnings he was giving before and whether or not he indeed was doing what he said he was doing. What I do know is that the talking points were vetted by the consultants that the district was using for the cyber attack, so that the communication was.
But was it true?
consistent.
What was the talking point?
I don't have a copy of the talking points.
Okay.
They weren't part of the record.
Okay.
any more questions, Jason? Just go down the row. Nez, do you have any questions? Trustee Baker? Rios? Hey. At this point, let's open it up to our public comment on this matter. And then we'll adjourn for closed session. Mo, I have 2 cards for you.
Yeah, I was gonna talk about bargaining, but that's afterwards.
Okay. And
Just put
then,
me last. How about
do you
that?
want to speak on this matter as well?
Yes, but I can go out. I'll let the other.
Okay. Casey, are you good? Okay. Let's go. Jasenia?
Good evening. Classified professionals here at Napa Valley College have the college's mission, vision, and values at the forefront of our work daily. It is our passion in the work we do for our students in our community that comes first, as it should. Incidents like the one singled out in this meeting is just the other side of the coin. It is a result of not being heard. It is a result of being put on the back burner. It is demeaning. Ryan is a classified professional. I want to emphasize the word professional here. When management and this district does not treat us as the professionals we are, frustration is a sentiment that we all feel, to put it lightly and to say the least. The district in many spaces and places will interject to us and to the community that we're the backbone of this college. But the reality is we're not treated like we are. We're not respected like we are. And the morale at this college is low. Our reality is we're the workers. We have exhausting workloads. We're short-staffed and we do as we're told. Should we ever fall out of line to that? Well, it's offensive. But winding back to the news of the ransomware attack on the college, this was a very high stress time for everyone. The tension was high for us all, but especially for the IT department. This isolated incident is exactly that. This happened one time at a very, very stressful, high tension time for us all at Napa Valley College. Ryan had no disciplinary history during his employment here, nor negative performance evaluations. A lot of what we heard already is hearsay and a play on words. We ask that the panel recommendation is upheld and that our colleague can return to work. Thank you for your time.
You Jasenia. Shreya, I have one for you. Do you want to?
Good evening, Board of Trustees, college community, fellow constituents, and fellow classified professionals. I must share because it's the right thing to do in my heart. For the record, my name is Cherie Marcos, and I'm one of the technology technicians here on campus. I know and help many, if not all, in the room today. I was present during this incident and was disheartened when college police were used to quiet a concerned employee of this college. Richard Brian Foreman started his work in our department in 2018. Throughout his career here, he has been nothing but helpful and is a great addition to IT services on campus. He has been kind and always offered to help when done with his own tasks. From the beginning, during downtime, Ryan focused on security vulnerabilities that he was finding as he was out and about. It was apparent that our college was at risk for a major security incident. Our previous IT lead and other technicians also warned about security prior to their retirements. Ryan tried raising concerns through email and at various meetings to no avail. After Ryan returned from being sick and being on vacation, we learned of an incident that brought our systems to a halt. I received a text message telling me not to log into email or our computers and that we would have a mandatory in-person meeting on Monday, June 13th. We all came in essentially flying blind, and our network administrator said nothing, leaving the office minutes before the accusing party walked in with talking points. All of this going on at the same time caused this miscommunication. Ryan was upset, but never threatening. The only time I felt unsafe during this meeting was when Dr. Gaharo raised his voice to me and told me to sit down and be quiet. Ryan didn't make a threat, but was not going to be bullied or let his colleagues get bullied when trying to raise concerns during this incident. This was wrong, and his words should have been taken into consideration instead. All assigned tasks were always done within a day or so, and the network specialist, along with a previous part-timer, created a virus cleaner. This cleaner was the only way we had any reprieve in 2020, 2021, as we were being hit really hard by a detrimental virus. Please do not terminate Ryan for doing the right thing as our network specialist. Let him come back to help strengthen our network security posture on campus. Cares about this place and the students most of all. His network communications experience from the Air Force makes him a great asset to our department as well. Thank you for listening and have a great night.
Thank you, Cherie. Amanda Frost.
Good evening. My name is Amanda Frost. I am the classified chief humane steward. I have been employed at NVC for 23 years. Monday, June 13th, 2022 was a very stressful and traumatic day for most NVC employees. Many of us had heard rumors over the weekend of a cyber attack. There were many unknowns, fears, and frustrations, lots of questions and disbelief. What is a cyber attack? What does this mean? How will this affect our students? How will this affect the entire campus? I still recall that weekend and that Monday, and I can only imagine what the climate was like in the IT office and the stress and frustration of the employees and managers, what they were experiencing. Ryan is accused of making inappropriate comments to other staff and managers during a specific incident that morning of the 13th. There was also a manager present who made very inappropriate comments to classified staff. That manager did not receive a warning or any disciplinary action for their behavior. Ryan was immediately escorted off campus by campus police, which you've heard, and put on administrative leave. Ryan did not have any prior warnings, write-ups, or complaints in his personnel file. And I concur with the arbitrator that Ryan should be reinstated to his position as network specialist. Thank you.
Thank you, Amanda. Is anyone else wanting to speak? My last card is from Mo.
Hi, Board of Trustees. I just wanted to reiterate that we could understand discipline if he had any previous history of discipline or even a bad evaluation. He had none of those. His record was clean, and this is an incident that happened at a high emotional time. And Ryan was trying to warn about these problems for months beforehand. He's exactly the kind of person that we need in this district. We need more folks like Ryan that can help us proactively avoid these problems. And honestly, I don't think to me, I feel like the members have more important things to do than trying to decide individual disciplines. I would like our board to be focused on the vision of NVC and how do we get to become a better college rather than individual personnel matters. We believe that the district should follow what the arbitrator's independent recommendation is. They're the experts in this. They do this all day. You don't need to dig into all the details. In my opinion, the board should be leading, not trying to dig into details of minor issues. And we also know that so many people came out because they believe in this employee, right? People wouldn't come out if they thought he was a slacker or said he wasn't doing his job. As the union, we want to make sure there's fair discipline across the board for everybody. That's critical. And having an outside independent, arbitrator making those decisions help us ensure that's the case. We hope you'll uphold the arbitrator's recommendation and bring Ryan back to work. And then, point of order, are y'all going to be discussing getting in the closed session?
No.
Okay, then I'll save my other comment for later.
Okay. Okay. Any other members of the community or classified wanting to speak? Okay. So at this point, we've heard all public comment on closed session matters. This hearing is concluded. The board will deliberate on this matter in closed session. So we are gonna move to closed session. We will return hopefully by 5:30. Items for closed session are 4.1 public employee discipline dismissal release, 4.2 conference with labor negotiators, 4.3 public employee performance evaluation. So at this point, I'm gonna adjourn us for.
Just to clarify, you're not speaking about 4.2, right?
No.
Okay.
Okay. We will. At this point, we're gonna do our announcements of items from closed session. This is section 5.1. In closed session, the Board of Trustees by a vote of 6-1. Trustees in favor, Trustee Jenny Olson, Trustee Jennifer Baker, Trustee Jeff Dodd, and Trustee Inez de Luna, Trustee Rafael Rios, and myself, with Trustee Kishneff opposing, took action to reject the Adjustment Board's recommendation in the disciplinary appeal of a network specialist and upheld the termination. So it is not a matter that we took lightly, but that is the decision by this board. So with that, we're gonna move to public comment. And is Mo still here? Is he coming back? Okay. All right, so we're gonna move to item 6. This is general public comment. This public comment opportunity is governed by the California Brown Act. By definition, this is an opportunity to hear concerns, perspectives, and differing vantage points. The board is not able under the Brown Act to engage in any level of conversation or discussion, but we look forward to this opportunity to gather community input. At this time, the board will devote up to 15 minutes to review comment to the Board of Trustees regarding any subject not appearing as an agenda item for this meeting, but over which the board has jurisdiction. No action or discussion will occur at this time on such items. Each comment shall last no longer than 3 minutes. Catherine, do we have any other public comments?
No, we have no other comment.
I did have one from Mo, and I talked to him. We did public negotiation or labor negotiations in closed session. He wanted to speak on that. He was okay doing it during the open session, but he has left. So I just wanted the record to note that too. Thank you. Item 7 is consent calendar. Do we have any questions on the consent calendar? Trustee Kishneff?
Yes, again, I would like to pull item 7.10 from the consent calendar, please.
Okay, with 7:10 pulled from the consent calendar, do I have a motion to approve?
Motion to approve.
Motion by Trustee Rios and a second by Trustee DeLuna. Consent calendar. So with that said, do we want to cover 7:10 now? Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, consent calendar approved. Thank you, Trustee Baker. Jim, you wanna
Yeah, Trustee Kishner, perhaps you could outline what questions you have about that.
Sure,
agenda item.
sure. I understand that there's a time constraint here to come to create a privacy policy so that we can further our partnership with the Napa Valley Unified School District, but I'm not willing to support that policy because there's a deadline. Under Article 2, Section 1, this agreement assigns ownership of our students' data over to law enforcement. It states specifically that all student data transmitted to company, that's us, pursuant to agreement, is and will continue to be the property of and under the control of the law enforcement agency. Under Section 2, it says that law enforcement shall establish reasonable procedures by which parents of minors may review what's been shared, but it's going to be too late by then, won't it? And this is no slight against A&W or our campus police, but I find this agreement alarming and in violation of the U.S. Bill of Rights and probably in violation of the Napa Valley Unified School District privacy agreements. Some people hand over their rights to law enforcement without really thinking about it, but the law, in fact, specifically protects our students from this. And there's more. Pretend for a moment that you're single and in your early 20s and raising a child by yourself and can barely afford to survive. You've got a $2,800 warrant out on an old speeding ticket. I don't believe that that person should have to risk arrest to better themselves and get an education. And I don't believe the college should be in support, or excuse me, I do believe the college should be supporting that person to invest in themselves and non-law enforcement. I know it's tempting to trust law enforcement. They keep us safe. They're our family and they're friends when they go to work. They smile with your children in cute little costumes and are nice guys. They keep your school safe at middle school and junior high. But systematically, things do target certain groups for money, for making education harder, and incarceration. And that poor people is the #1 category. I'm asking everyone here to vote for the education and not for law enforcement. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Trustee Kishner. Let me point out that this educational talent search is an effort to raise students of need with federal dollars. It is sponsored by the Unified School District and is supported by certainly our staff here at Napa Valley Community College District. It is not intended to be punitive or have police oversight. We didn't write those regs. And though many may feel as you do, some feel that the greater good is served by being able to have these resources to support students in raising them up and providing them support and educational opportunities.
If I could add, this agreement, the work that we've done with Educational Talent Search over the many years in Napa Valley College has really been focused on supporting those who are most in need, to our first generation low income students. So this really is that pipeline into Napa Valley College, specifically for our equity-based programs like EOPS, SSS Trio, and others. So it really is the intent to create pipelines, not only to the community college, but to the university and to careers and whatnot. So that is the purpose of this. That this is the work that we've been doing for many years with the school district, and it done it very successfully.
And I think in the interest of those things, it would be more beneficial to have the college own that data. And we should be refusing to turn that data over to law enforcement without a warrant. We have a right against illegal search. And we should be demanding that there's a reason to be giving it over before we give it over. And that's all I'm going to say about that.
Thank you, Trustee Kishner. Thank you, Mr. Reeves and Dr. G. With that said, I'm gonna ask for a motion to approve 7.10.
So moved.
I have a motion by Trustee DeLuna. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
A second by trustee Baker. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 All those opposed?
Nay.
Catherine, 6-1. You have those? Okay. We are moving to our information item 12.1. This is our main campus and housing center solar projects update. And turn it over to you, Mr. Reeves.
Thank you, President Iverson. I'm pleased to bring back the solar matter to the Board of Trustees. The solar program or issue has had a long history here, and we are going to revisit that with a new solar solution. Today is not we are not requesting a decision on this. We wanted to sunlight it and begin the process of considering a solar solution. After this meeting, it will go to our facilities committee for additional consideration and be brought back to the board. I'd like to introduce three gentlemen here who will have a presentation. First of all, I'd like to introduce Dr. Tom Burke from the California Community College League. The Community College League is very instrumental in supporting California community colleges across the state in several areas, but including advancing their energy efficiency initiatives. So Tom Burke is here. You may know that Lisa Malloy was in this role until she left pretty recently. That's a name I think most of us know. In addition, Mr. Kevin Flanagan is here from SPUR. SPUR is a school project for utility rate reduction. And he is an independent body. He's not paid by anyone. Are we paying you, Kevin? Good. And represents the interests of higher education and other nonprofits in terms of supporting rate reductions. And finally, but not least, is Mr. Nate Smithide. He's the manager of Forefront Power, and he has been working with the college now for a couple of years, I think, in terms of understanding our needs and providing some possible solutions. So, gentlemen, why don't we start with Nate? Nate has a brief presentation, and that Mr. Flanagan and Mr. Burke, Dr. Burke, can weigh in as questions arise.
Okay, great. We can make it a fun team event here. Jim, thank you for the introductions, trustees. Thank you for the opportunity to be here tonight and discuss this exciting project. I'd like to hand it over first to Kevin, just based on the slide deck. And Kevin can introduce SPUR, who they are. Tom can speak briefly about the California Community College League, and then I can get into Forefront Power and the project specifics. Should not be longer than 10 minutes.
Right. Who has control over the slide? Okay, should I just? Okay, great. Yeah, you can move to the next one, please. Thank you. Yeah, thank you for having us here tonight, giving us the opportunity to present to you all. And Jim, if you'd like to pay me, you can. I don't want to close off that opportunity. It's fine. So as Jim said, I'm from an organization called SPUR, which stands for School Project for Utility Rate Reduction. So we're a joint powers authority that was created by community college districts and K-12 districts back in 1989. And our mission is to develop piggybackable buying programs to help schools and colleges reduce utility costs. So I help run our solar buying program. Basically what we did is run a statewide request for proposals, trying to solicit pricing and terms from qualified vendors. A lot of vendors competed in that competitive process. And ultimately, as a part of that competitive process, we selected Forefront Power as the winning vendor. And then we ultimately negotiated contract terms and conditions with them that you all can take advantage of. The RFP that we conducted, you can go to the next slide if you like. The RFP that we conducted has been utilized by over 75 public agencies across the state now. So not just community college districts and K-12 districts, but counties and cities and special districts, and even the state of California have utilized this program to procure solar for their facilities. So it's a tried and true program that we're really proud of and has a strong track record behind it. And that's really kind of our role here, is to sort of answer that question for you all, like, hey, why are we talking to Forefront Power and not somebody else, right? So I think the answer to that question is the RFP that we conducted and the competitive process that we issued on behalf of community colleges and K-12 districts. So.
Good evening, trustees. I'll be very brief. Community College League of California. We are involved in this program to provide for our member districts the opportunity to get the most efficient and least cost systems. And this is one of the services that the league has brought together to allow districts like Napa to take advantage of their efficiencies. As a side note, I am the retired chancellor of the current community college district. And our district took advantage of this program in a big way, and we have been very pleased with the results of this program.
A quick commercial about who Forefront Power is. We are a nationwide developer of commercial and industrial sized solar and battery storage projects. The backbone of our business is in California and with the public sector. As you can see, evidenced on the slide here, we've completed successfully over 200 unique and separate solar and battery storage projects through the Division of State Architects, which is no small feat in California. And our main differentiator, as Kevin alluded to, is really that we are awarded the SPUR RFP. So we are, we do have that stamp of approval. Next step, please. I'm sorry, next slide, please. The layouts. This is a conceptual layout of what the solar project will look like. It's very small print. I can walk you through some of these specifics. So we have, starting at the north side of the campus, we'd be filling out that parking lot. We avoided the middle of the campus. That was based on feedback years ago from Matt Christensen with the district, who was expecting the potential for future build out in that area. At this point, the layout is rectangles on a page. I mean, we've submitted this to PG&E and they've accepted it, but that doesn't mean that the layout can't change. And then we'd be filling out the bottom of the parking lot. These would be solar canopies. So like what you see in every other parking lot in California, right? Low side 11 feet, high side 13 feet. These are all south facing canopies. And then moving to the west, we have the replacement of the existing ground mounted solar project out in the solar farm. So I have a slide on the, how that will work and the specifics of that we can get to in a second. But if we could go to the next slide, please. In this solution, this proposal, we also have the housing project as well. That system has already been approved by PG&E as well. It's much smaller than the main campus. Obviously, it's tied directly into their PG&E meter on site, so it'd be offsetting all of the energy consumption at the new housing project. Next slide, please. So getting into the existing solar project and just trying to be as succinct as possible here. What we'd be doing is we'd be removing everything that cannot be reused associated with the project. The project was, is almost 20 years old. So it is quite, quite dated. There are still components in there that we can reuse. So we'd be completely removing that project, and then we'd be replacing it with a 7, because it's a floodplain pretty much. We'd be replacing it with a 7.5 foot kind of a canopy ground mount system. It's somewhat unique just based on the floodplain aspect out there. So it wouldn't be the full canopies you'd have in your parking lot, but it would not be a ground mounted system that you might see out in the valley somewhere. It would be 7 feet tall, low side of those panels. And then I think that's kind of the main points for this slide. We can keep going, please. The method of procurement in which the district would be pursuing both the canopy project on the main campus in the parking lot, the housing center, and the replacement of the ground mount is through what's called a power purchase agreement, also known as a PPA. We see about 99% of specifically community college and school district customers utilizing this method because it requires no upfront cost, no use of bond funds. The way that it works is the company that I represent, Forefront Power, we finance the system, we develop it, we build it, and then we operate and maintain the project, and then we simply sell the energy that the project produces back to the district for a rate that's lower than what PG&E is currently charging you. So that's where the savings are derived, is a PPA rate that's lower than what you're currently being charged from PG&E. This operates as a utility rate hedge because the PPA rate is fixed. Your PG&E rates are not fixed. And then finally, rounding off on this slide, the PPA is an aligned partnership in that because the only way Forefront Power is able to recoup its investment in the project is by the district buying the energy that's being produced by it. We're incentivized to make sure that the system is operating at its expected functionality. So we provide all the operations and maintenance. It's not, what we're trying to avoid is what's happened to the existing ground mount system. It's sitting idle. That would be money out of Forefront Power's pocket in this arrangement. So that's a really key difference between what was and this project. Next slide, please. Here are the pricing and saving estimates. So there are two tables here. We have a table that you can see in the top left-hand corner that's called NEM 2.0. That stands for Net Energy Metering 2.0. Net Energy Metering is the policy framework for all California solar customers, residential systems included, in which any exported generation that's not consumed from your solar project on site goes back to the grid. Under Net Energy Metering 2.0, PG&E credits the district for roughly the retail rate of that energy. That policy changed last spring. However, we were able to, with the help of Jim and his team, submit interconnection applications for these projects under NEM 2.0, meaning that as long as we construct the system within a certain timeline, we are then grandfathered for 20 years, which matches the PPA term under NEM 2.0. There's downside, which is NEM 3.0. That is the current universe of net energy metering, which if you think about $1 for your energy under NEM 2, NEM 3 is like 40 cents. So it's a substantially lower credit for the exported generation. I do want to be clear that there are very specific timelines for us to capture NEM 2.0. I think one of the reasons why we're speaking about this tonight is to try to move forward with the project so we can sign it and build it. There is certainly a risk of NEM 3. That's why we're showing both sensitivities here. One thing that we do have working in our favor is in the background of this project continuing to kind of materialize itself through the district's process, PG&E has actually been delayed. So they've been delayed 87 business days, which is roughly 3 or 4 months. So that should give us, and if they continue to delay, we can evidence that to PG&E, and that should give us the ability to extend our NEM 2.0 build timelines. Next slide, please. This is just a summary of the fixed PPA rate. Again, that's a utility rate hedge. You have Kevin and the Spur team, negotiating on your behalf. That's an independent third party. We have a best-in-class performance guarantee. So what I wanted to explain here is that, again, all of the operations and maintenance included in this project, which is dramatically different than the existing ground mounted project. So I think that's all I have. Thank you for bearing with me through that long-winded explanation.
Thank you, gentlemen. Do we have any questions?
I just am curious about, and I wouldn't want to propose anything that might create a delay that would make that NEM3 thing happen. But I'm just curious, the build out in the parking lots really only covers about maybe a third of our parking. And I'm just curious, is there been any discussion about, would we ever want to do anything differently with the space where the current array is? I don't know if that's an option needed since it's floodplain, but if we're talking about putting something that's going to be there for years and years and years, would we maybe not want to look at doing more parking so that we would have access to that land? So just throwing that out there.
Yeah, and I just to piggyback off the call, I wasn't actually thinking about not doing it there, and I appreciate you mentioning that right away. That hey, this is flexible, this is conceptual. So that's really nice to hear. And maybe that's a discussion for the facilities committee to kind of weigh in on that, Jim. But I wasn't thinking, but of not doing it in that location at all. But maybe in fact another option was maybe moving it further to the north in the northern corner of the property. Just I think the 100-foot setback wetland, that's very conservative. So it's not necessarily like an environmental issue, but just having more contiguous open space area of the fields. If we were ever going to build out our fields, just to have a little bit more contiguous open acreage over there that was next to each other. And then regarding what the term of the PPA
is 20 years.
Is 20 years. And then at the end of the life of the PPA, who would the college or the district still own the panels and that infrastructure?
Yeah, that's a great question. There are three scenarios that can play out at the end of the 20-year term. One, the district can say, we want to buy this project, and you buy the system out. And then you own it, and Forefront Power is no longer involved. Unless you'd like us to continue to do operations and maintenance. So you would not be paying, monthly invoices for the PPA rate. The second scenario would be, we like the PPA. We like third-party ownership. Forefront Power is maintaining the system. You can, at that point, extend the PPA, re-sign the PPA for another 5 or 10 years. The useful life of solar modules is roughly 30 years. So you still have, and estimated degradation of panels is 0.5% annually. So you still have a system that is producing a decent amount of energy at the end of the 20-year term. So you could say, we want to buy it, or we want to, sign a new PPA rate. And at that point, the district has a lot of leverage. Also, Forefront Power is more incentivized to likely re-sign a new PPA than come out and remove the project. And that's the third scenario, is Forefront Power is obligated at no cost to the district to come out and remove this system and restore to previous conditions.
And two more questions. I'll just ask them back to back.
Yeah, of course.
In terms of, is there a surplus energy, and is the college benefiting from the sale of that surplus energy?
Yep.
And then the second question is, how come no battery energy storage systems?
Yeah, two really good questions. The question about the surplus energy is handled by net energy metering. So anything that's not consumed, quote unquote, surplus on campus will go back to PG&E. And if it's NEM2, again, it will be credited at that retail rate. If it's NEM3, it's a lower compensation rate. So the total offset of both the systems, the canopies plus the ground mount at the main campus, is roughly 85% of your annual energy needs. So there's not going to be a ton of surplus energy. And then the second question I've just completely forgotten. Can you remind me?
Best system, battery.
Oh, no battery storage. We studied the system for batteries as well. Batteries do really well with spikier load profiles. So batteries at a commercial level, like what we'd install for the district, are much different than what you might assume for like a Tesla, Powerwall at your home. These batteries are really geared towards providing demand reduction and energy arbitrage for a big campus like this. So demand reduction, i.e. PG, you have all of your lights on, you're having sports games, max demand from the grid. PG&E charges you a premium for those demand spikes. The battery fires off electrons, it smooths demand spikes, and then you're able to save money from your demand profile being reduced. When we looked at NVC, it's somewhat of a flat demand profile, meaning that the battery is unable to provide value from a monetary standpoint to offset the costs that would be required to actually build out the battery. So it's like can those costs be outweighed by the savings? And we concluded that they couldn't currently.
The only reason I totally trust your judgment on that. It sounds like you've clearly thought about it, but I'm just wondering if that evaluation was made based on our historic utility bills, where we haven't really been a 24-hour campus, and now we're kind of moving into that next era, probably in a slower way. We know we're not going to ramp up to 100% right away, but that was just something that, if it's based on your previous utility, I'm wondering if we can kind of forecast maybe in the next 3 to 4 years or 5 years where we might be at.
Yeah, that we looked at 2022 into 2023 data for the basis of this calculation. So, we don't have we could refresh that the last 12 months. I think we might, we study a lot of community colleges and we see similar trends with batteries and, not necessarily penciling because of load profiles, and also because of batteries are somewhat prohibitively expensive at this point. They just haven't gotten to a place where they're providing a ton of value for large educational institutions like the college. But we can absolutely look at the analysis again. We can ask for updated bill data. I will preface the analysis with the fact that we submitted an interconnection application that I alluded to PG&E that was predicated upon this specific KW system size. We could potentially, because PG&E makes you fits you in a box, right? It's say this total system size is 3 megawatts. If you deviate, below, you can't go above, but below 20% of that 3 megawatts, then you're flagged and your application gets kicked out of the queue, which we don't want to happen. So if we were to add a battery, it would technically increase our KW. So it could be a balance of maybe we downsize and add a battery to retain the same KW system size. So we can absolutely look into that. And we can add a battery later also.
I didn't know the deal or whatever, but yeah.
I got very much so into the weeds. Apologies.
I love it. I love the weeds. Love it.
Along the lines of adding, sorry, are you next? Okay.
Thank you. Just a quick question about timing. You mentioned that PG&E has kind of been pushed out 2 or 3 months, but what is the build out timeline?
Yeah. So ideally, once we start, the project won't be able to move right until we have executed contracts. So that's the first stage gating item, and that's why we're here tonight. And then from there, we'd want to hit the ground as quickly as possible. We've already conducted preliminary site diligence here, so we understand title and survey, all the stuff that we would do in the first 2 to 3 months. We've started. We cannot, we can't complete those without spending more significant dollars. We can't spend significant dollars without a signed contract. So I would imagine, from contract execution to construction start is usually, somewhere in 8 to 12 months range. And then the build out, it depends on how the replacement of the existing ground mount goes. That's a little bit abnormal to be fully transparent. I don't think it's going to be a massive deal, but the total construction timeline can vary depending on how we want it, depending on space, also with the parking lot, how much space we can take up, but probably anywhere from 6 months to 8 months for construction. And then if PG&E if we're able to bargain with PG&E for their delays, then hopefully that pushes out that deadline. And we can evidence that with, because we've been saving notifications from PG&E saying delay, delay, delay. So that would be the strategy there, really to give us our best shot of capturing them 2.0.
Thank you.
Yep.
Jim has something, but Inez,
No, I just wanted to ask real quick about like technology as it improves, or the hardware.
Mhm.
Is that built into so things would get replaced or improved, or is that?
So the modules will stay the same. They'll be installed and they'll stay the same. Solar modules have experienced a really dramatic and exponential growth since the system that was installed in 2006. You can think about the efficiency of a solar module, quadrupling in the last 20 years. So they're at a really good place in terms of their cost as well as their efficiency. So from a solar module standpoint, no, they'd stay there. The beauty of a solar project is kind of just, it's relatively low maintenance. If things break, right, Forefront Powers, that's our bill, right? Because we provide there's a performance guarantee and we provide all the operations and maintenance. So if something breaks and there's a newer version, we'd absolutely install that.
Nate, one of the challenges that have vexed districts in the past who have done solar projects is the companies who made promises to districts went out of business before their promises were in fact honored.
Mm-hmm.
Why would we go with Forefront Power?
Mm-hmm. Yep. I have a slide. If you could, excuse me, could you go up just one slide, please? So my answer to that, Jim, would be the fact that Forefront Power is backed by a company called Mitsui. Mitsui is a Japanese conglomerate. They own many other businesses that are not Forefront Power. Nationwide, they are a strong, stable parent company with billions of dollars under management. And they stand behind us as, our backer. And I guess for the district, assurance that Forefront Power will be around, for the entirety of this project.
any other questions?
Yeah. Covered part of the parking lot and you're gonna sell us power at a reduced rate. Do we have a guarantee that we're saving money on PG&E? Also, is it possible to put more, to cover more of the parking lot so that we're not buying power from you at all, but paying for our own usage and not having a bill?
Yep, that's a good question. So we're currently offsetting 85% of the consumption. That was based on the space that we had discussed previously with college. We can mix in, again, rectangles on a page. They can move around, but as I had mentioned about our interconnection application with PG&E currently, we cannot go above what we've submitted. So this would be, the current iteration. And then in order to cover, that 15% gap in terms of energy usage, the district can, this doesn't need to be the only solar project. You can absolutely, like Kevin mentioned, with a battery as well, try to reduce usage through either a battery or an additional solar project beyond this.
And would it be possible to produce enough power that we were selling it to you instead of buying it from you?
PG&E doesn't let that happen. No. So that's that would be, then you get into utility scale solar, right?
Is it possible for us to build our own panels and cut you out? And I mean, this company's worth $8.4 billion for a reason, right?
Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Totally.
Hey.
I'm on board. You guys can hire me.
I appreciate this, gentlemen. I had a quick question just for Jim on our current parking lot. Is there anything that we have to do to prep for this, or are we good to go with the parking lot as it is? And then can we repave it once they're in?
Well, the parking lot needs repaving now. So I don't think we're going to do any damage if we did construction in the
I didn't
next
see the repaving.
several
in the
months.
Bid though, is that? something
But
that-
we would hope to generate enough savings to begin repaving the parking lot, but it's not included as part of the scope of work.
You can absolutely repave it afterwards.
Okay. Perfect. No other.
By hand.
We'll try. Yeah. Okay, well, thank you. Appreciate it and look forward to working with you guys.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you very much. It was wonderful to meet
Thank
you
you.
all.
Thank you. 12.2, 2024 to 2025 unrestricted general fund 11 operating fund revenues and expenditures budget update as of July 31st, 2024. Mr. Reeves.
First of all, my apologies to Trustee Baker. She requested that we insert the tentative budget into this. I'm going to blame someone on my staff who wanted to go on vacation, and I didn't get the word to them in time. So my apologies there.
Yes, and know that you might have approved that vacation.
I did. I also want to add that the final budget will be part of the September meeting and an audit and finance committee prior to the next meeting. So you'll see that part of it. There's really not a lot to report here. This is a pre-audit finish of the 23-24 budget. The changes are fairly minor. We did receive a little more revenue on the property tax side. We're about 99% of what we projected, and a total of about 98% of our total revenues as we budgeted. So that's we're generally on target, and we may see a little more trickling, but I think it's pretty close to what we can expect. The only other observation I always make that's different from our last report is under total expenditures, bottom of the page, the blue line. We're at about $2.5 million under expended on the budget. So while we're working on our transfers now into for Fund 11 expenses that should be in Fund 12, I think we're going to see a positive move in the reserve, and we will have a recommendation for a resolution to move some of that reserve to offset as yet an undetermined amount of our subordinate liability related to the housing project. So you can look forward to that. So fingers crossed we can do both that and hit our reserve target of just under 17%. But the jury's still out, but I'm hopeful. I don't want to make any promises, but it's trending in a positive direction, certainly for the end of the 23-24 and the kind of reserve balance we might have and what we're able to do with that. With that, I would certainly entertain any questions.
Any questions? Fire away.
I don't know why I've not noticed this before, but where is column C?
Where's what?
Column C?
Column C. Column C. It's hiding.
Okay, just
I believe it was an audited column that we collapsed to make room for the schedule.
Okay.
It is an audited column, I see. It appears to be an audited column. But I will reveal that, Trustee Baker, at the audit committee meeting, at our next meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Reeves. Real quick, Catherine, I just wanted to make sure that we don't have any posted comments on anything that we've covered so far.
There are posted comments under the solar project.
Okay.
I-
Is
There's
there
no
a desire
obligation.
to
open, but
open them, look at them? Okay. All right, so reports. 13. Let's start with, I don't see anyone here, but
I have Christine Tapia on Zoom, and that's it.
okay. I'll just run through them real quick. So no report from Associated Students in Napa Valley College. No report from Classified Senate, Danielle Alexander. A no classified association report, that would be Jasenia Coda. Administrative confidential Senate report, Christine Tapia. The floor is yours. Can hear us.
Good evening, trustees, President Powell, and members of cabinet and the campus community. My report is going to be very brief. Just a short report on the activities of the administrative confidential team at the onset of this new academic year to ensure a smooth and productive year ahead. This year, we are welcoming new hires. We're pleased to welcome new members to our management team. Denise Kaduri, Communications Manager in Public Affairs and Information. David Prince, who is an Accounting Manager in Administrative Services. Enoch Shuley, Manager of Winery, Hospitality and Culinary Operations in Career Education and Workforce Development. And last but not least, Dr. Ryan Smith, our new Dean of Counseling in the Student Affairs area. So we're excited for them to bring fresh perspectives and expertise to our team and the overall institution. We also bid farewell and best wishes to Rod Aubrey, our retired public information officer, and we thank him for his brief but meaningful tenure at NVC. And lastly, we continue to outline key priorities for this academic year, most of which are carryovers from the last year. Professional development is always at the top of the list, and we continue to seek institutional support for career development and training that address the diversity of needs of our managers and confidential staff. DEI as well. We wish to further strengthen our commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion through targeted initiatives and also regulatory compliance. And lastly, community building. So in alignment with the educational master plan and our equity goals, we seek to create a workplace culture where collaboration, communication, and mutual support are the norms. That concludes my report. Thanks.
Thank you, Christine. Next academic Senate report. And that would be Matthew Kronzer, the report, Faculty Association report. John Kingsclow, if I pronounced that right. Apologies if I didn't. Thank you. No report. So President Board reports 14.1.
Good evening. Today I wanted to highlight a piece of legislation that goes into effect this month, August 2024, and that is AB 928, the Student Transfer Achievement Reform Act. This was passed in 2021. And it requires that students within our system who choose a major that has both a local associate degree and an ADT, associate degree for transfer, that they be placed into the ADT for their educational planning. And as it goes into effect this month, I thought it might be helpful if you're hearing about it to give a little context to this legislation. The intention is very much aligned with the Guided Pathways effort to clarify pathways for students who already know they have a goal of transfer to one of our CSU systems. It shortens time to completion because it defines only those courses that are needed for that transfer goal. And one of the key differences is our local associate's degrees will have one or more classes more than the ADT. So it does streamline the process for movement over. I did also want to mention that one of the key outcomes differences is that ADT transfer students graduate at a higher rate than those students who transfer to universities without an ADT from our system. So we have a number of programs that are ADT eligible, and you can see the list divided into two groups, those that are Associate of Arts and those that are Associate of Science, a total of 28 programs of study. And I think we may not talk as much about some of these programs. So what I'd like to do over the coming year is highlight some of our ADT programs so that you may know more about them. So it's very exciting to see more students moving through these pathways toward their transfer goals. Thank you.
Good evening, board. Wanted to just spend a little bit of time this evening. I have a quick report, just highlighting some of the work Student Affairs has been doing over the summer months. Specifically, the impact our our different centers on campus have had, and it's specifically around counseling. So over the last several months, since you'll see there, since May 25th, we've served 2,666 students, not including today's numbers, in counseling. So you'll see there, it kind of breaks down the different areas as to the impacts that have been made. And obviously you can see the majority of it is in general counseling. So this is, by no surprise, as general counseling is really open to all students, and then we have our special programs underneath. They're listed. So I want to highlight this to just really demonstrate all the work, all the time, all the hours that is put in by all of our staff, from our frontline staff to our counseling staff who are working to serve students. You can scroll down a little bit for me, please, Catherine. And specifically, you know, you're going to see what is the goal of the appointment? What are they coming in for? And you'll see that for the abbreviated ed plan, which makes sense around this time, being that these students will be onboarding and then reviews of the ed plans and for fixing the schedule because of adding or dropping a class. So a lot of time has been spent over these last several months. This does not include all the work of the enrollment team, our front lines, our welcome center, the work of the financial aid department, who's actively working to serve students in that space, the health center, and all of our different spaces really serving students. I just want to highlight the impacts that are being made specifically in the counseling area, but just across all of our areas, and thank all of our student affairs staff for the hard work this summer. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. G.
Thank you, Dr. Grower. Just a brief update. You can read more about it in my posted report. I want to spend a few moments speaking about audit work. We are undergoing our audit right now for our financial statements. In addition to that, you may recall that the Board of Governors requested that 10 institutions across the state be audited for their 50% law compliance. So that has begun on our campus, and we're working with the state auditor to complete that work. We've asked Doug Roberts to come in and help out a little bit there. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays. Certainly, we're not the only one, and I was relieved to hear that the report is not intended to focus on Napa Valley College, but to focus on the issue across the state relative to the 50% law. So while we are part of that study, if you will, I don't think the intent is to put the spotlight on a single institution. It really is an effort to identify what the challenges are with meeting 50% law for some institutions. I would like to take you to the student housing update. You may know that the housing, the certificate of completion has been filed. It's a completed project. We still have a few orange vests out there mowing grass and sweeping walkways. If you haven't been there, it's truly a magnificent project. Move-in begins tomorrow, and we'll continue on Saturday. And if my experience is correct, it will continue all the way through the last day to add a class. So we'll see some activity there. We are seeing an uptick in our leasing. It's not what we expected, but today I heard a number of around 114 leases signed. So when I was there this morning with Dr. Powell, there was a lot of foot traffic moving in and about, getting tours, et cetera. So I think we are seeing some increased interest in that area. I would also add that the Wine Education Center project is clearly underway. We've provided it as an addendum to this report. Just an update on the budget with some pictures. The final grading has been completed, and they are putting in the underground plumbing now. So they're making good progress on that project as well. And with that, I would conclude my report.
Good evening. In human resources, we are working very diligently with our collective bargaining units at the table. We're currently at the table with classified, engaging in that work. And we are gearing up for conversations at the table with our faculty. We look forward to the continued collaboration in this very, very detailed work. Next month is open enrollment, and we will be sending out information regarding our campus benefit fair and all of the resources that we offer in our benefits package. We're also working on implementing or automating our performance evaluation process. This means taking what's already been negotiated. The evaluation tools will not change, but we will be having conversations across the board on how we can use the system that we have to automate that. This is again, in a way to reduce staff time and bring our systems up to date. As of August the 1st, Title IX regulations have been updated. There's a couple of areas in Title IX that the district will be focused on. Most importantly is the requirement for training. We are now required to train every single employee. That does not mean just offer, that means every single employee is legally required to attend Title IX training. So we will be rolling that out in October, and I will be back next month providing additional information on some of the changes for Title IX. I will also be tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock training all resident assistants as they are legally required to be mandated reporters. I will be training them on Title IX, and then on Monday, training all resident assistants on Title IX as well. Additionally, we have our workplace violence prevention plan. Next month, Chief Wade and I will be doing a presentation to all of you on what that means, how we're implementing it, as well as a training plan. All training for both of these items will be handled through our training and development in human resources. We are always busy replacing and trying to meet the critical needs of our district. And so here in my report, you see the number of open recruitments we have in upcoming positions. We have steadily worked very hard over the past year to fill our vacancies, and we will continue to do so. And that, trustees, is my report. Thank you.
Good evening, board. So what is projected here is the timeline that I presented for you last month for our 2025 follow-up report. And we are now implementing what we had scheduled for fall, particularly on that first row for August to December and the monthly updates to the campus community. So we've begun that process for the August accreditation update. So the August accreditation update will be sent out by Dr. Powell to the campus community via email. That's anticipated early next week. Just to give you kind of a preview of describe the update for August. Page 1 contains a summary of the action letter that we received from the ACCJC in June. It also identifies the remaining 2 college requirements as well as the accreditation standards that are cited within those 2 requirements. And then it notifies the campus community about our intent to provide these monthly updates to the campus community throughout the fall semester, leading up to the draft of the complete follow-up report in January. And then pages 2 and 3 of the August update contain the updates on college requirements 3 and 4. The template for the monthly updates, basically we're aiming for a 1-page summary for each college requirement as we move forward. And so this one is the one for August outlines accomplishments since the last update, which would have been when we submitted our follow-up report in February to the ACCJC. So there is a lot of work to look up that has occurred since February. So those accomplishments include some general institutional context. So for example, the development and your approval, thank you, of the EMP. That is something that lifts up and provides context for the work that we have, particularly to do in terms of the technology and facility plans this year. It also then identifies improvements that are associated with the specific accreditation standards cited within each of the CRs, and those are the college requirements. And that's 2 accreditation standards for each of those remaining requirements. In developing the monthly update, I relied heavily on the information in board docs. And so I have embedded hot links into the items that are associated with the statements that are in the August update. And so those will be included in what you and the campus community receive from Dr. Powell early next week. And similarly, on page 1, the narrative does include direct links to the action letter that we received, as well as the ACCJC's policy on actions on institutions as reports for everyone. And again, it will be sent out by Dr. Powell early next week.
Thank you, Dr. Warnall. Just to round out President's Area reports, I just have 3 quick updates. Next week, we welcome our faculty back. It's Flex next week. And the week after that, we have the start of classes. So you'll notice this is later than in prior years. This is the first semester where we'll be operating from the compressed calendar, transitioning from an 18-week semester down to a 16-week semester. Very excited about that because we know that data has shown that students perform better in a compressed calendar than they do in the 18 weeks. It's just a little easier for them to last through 16 versus 18. I do want to give a special thanks to the compressed calendar work group, to Dr. Mora, members of her team, for moving so quickly and transitioning us to this compressed calendar on a very, very compressed timeline. I think you managed to do this within 16 months or so, and that is no small feat. So we are very excited. This is something the campus has been wanting to do for many years, but never quite managed to do. And so my thanks to members of that team, Dr. Moore, your leadership for that. Last week, we held our manager's retreat at Redwood Credit Union, and we were in their community room. Gave us a good chance to break out and actually start digging into the weeds of our educational master plan. And so we spent some time deconstructing that plan, defining, what it meant for us in our respective areas, and then also issued a challenge to the managers to actually construct their own independent goal or goals for this year, 24-25, based upon the educational master plan. Again, just part of our efforts to contextualize the work that we do under and nested under, the institutional priorities, and ensure that all of our work is mission critical, really tasks that help us drive that EMP forward. So very excited to see the management team's goals coming out in the next few weeks or so. Last update is I will be serving as the Region 2 representative for the Affordability, Food, and Housing Access Task Force, which has been impaneled by the CEO, NVC Board. This is a very important convening of CEOs around the state. They've produced several useful bits of information, including in November, a research brief which outlines the real peril that our students are in relative to food and housing and security. Really substantial work coming out of this task force. So I'm, very happy to serve on that, particularly given our status as the 13th community college in the state in student housing. And I'll go so far as to say the 3rd with really nice student housing. No disrespect to the other 10. So very, very excited to be serving on that work group, and I'll give updates on statewide initiatives relative to those areas throughout the course of the year. So this concludes President's Area updates.
Thank you. And Mo, I see you're back, and I apologize again for running into closed session when you wanted to comment on the labor negotiations. So would you like to speak on it now?
Thank you so much for taking the time. Again, I wasn't prepared to speak now, but I will anyway. So I just wanted to say quickly that we are, we appreciate that we've been meeting with management for a while now. We've been disappointed about where we've left off. It's always like that, or is it me? So anyway, we were hearing stories about people who are in our bargaining unit talking about how hard it is to just survive these days in Napa. In terms of the housing costs are already high. The food costs have risen, and it's just to the point where our folks can't make a living wage here. And we were talking to one employee who left. She was living with her mom just to try to make ends meet. And even then, she eventually decided to take a job at a different district where she could make more money, right? So we're losing people because they can't afford to stay. And it's becoming crisis level. And so, you know, in negotiations, our priorities are getting us closer to a living wage and having affordable family health care. Right now, we don't. And also, you know, one of the other priorities is staffing. Unfortunately, what we came back with so far, management has responded with, we'll give you a 1% raise. We'll keep the health insurance at the single family, you know, to cover a single family Kaiser. And we also want to change retiree medical so that incoming employees have to wait 99 years until they qualify for retiree medical. So again, it feels like if anything, we're going backwards and not even keeping up with the pace of inflation for our lowest paid employees. I read on the, you know, I see that your goals are to center, you know, diversity, equity, and inclusion, and treating most of the folks that do the work here at the lower level and not giving them a living wage is just not something that's acceptable for us. And so we feel like we're really far apart at the moment, and we hope we'll get the board support to get a fair deal as we continue to move forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Mom. All right. 14.2, standing committee and other appointment reports. I don't think DAS, you're meeting in a couple weeks, right? No report for DAS, right? Viticulture and winery. Yeah. And I'm sure you have something to report on your upcoming event.
Foundation, well, a couple points. I think most of the board is aware too that the foundation has allocated, you know, a significant amount of funds from viticulture and winery technology awards and the adaptive PE through the Evelyn Allen grant, and so set aside funds to do for awards. And starting this year, I think it's about 100,000 ish. I might be overestimated, but I think it's pretty close to that in terms of to award for student housing subsidies and grants for the housing project. And before that, the foundation had already, I think, allocated or about $30,000. I think with a real focus on, you know, foster youth and homeless for folks that really needed it. So that's, I think, a really cool development. I think as the foundation grows more and the housing projects, I think, becomes more prominent in our community. I really kind of and hopeful that the foundation will, you know, continue this commitment to, you know, supporting our students and these basic life needs, and hopefully grow those funds in the future. I've mentioned before, we're working very hard on our Storm Cup golf tournament, which is this Monday. A couple of our trustees and a couple of our staff and administrators will be joining us. Any trustees or other folks in this room would like to join, just please let me know. Not if you want to golf. The golf is at 12 o'clock. It's really, you're more than welcome to do that. But if you're not a golfer, we're going to have absolutely delicious pizza, some great wines, including Napa Valley College wines, all out there. So just let me know. I won't charge you. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, 14.3, future agenda items. Do we have any agenda requests? Okay. 14.4, trustee and board chair reports. I'm gonna start with our student trustee.
So I attended the student trustee workshop in Burlingame from August 2nd to 4th. During the workshop, I had the opportunity to meet with student trustees from community colleges across the state of California. I enjoyed learning from other student trustees' experiences, learning more about my responsibilities as a student trustee, and I learned that 70% of the apportionment of state funding is based on enrollment. A couple of ways community colleges across California have been trying to increase their enrollment since the pandemic is adding more night classes and redesigning classrooms in ways that make students feel more comfortable. Sorry. The representatives from the SSCCC shared valuable resources, online training opportunities about the role of student trustees that I look forward to attending in the future. I enjoyed the workshop because it was very encouraging to new student trustees who are still learning about their role, like myself. Additionally, the ASNVC board held the fall retreat last week, August 6th and 7th. We discussed our roles and responsibilities as ASNVC board members. Robin Darkangelo and Omar Pena gave a presentation on leadership, emphasizing the importance of nurturing personal growth to become better leaders, empowering others, and the importance of communication to accomplish our goals as the ASMC board. We listened to a presentation from the SSCCC on Robert's Rules, the Brown Act, and we practiced using Robert's Rules. The ASMC board will be meeting next Tuesday to discuss the tentative budget for ASMC. That's the end of my report. Thank you.
Thank you, Cindy. And then we'll start with Raphael.
I have no report.
Hi, I just wanted to share about a conference coming up in September that Mentis and Napa County Health and Human Services and Napa Valley College are co-sponsoring. It's a suicide prevention conference entitled Hope Beyond Darkness, Uniting for Suicide Prevention. And it will be here at the PAC on September 18th from 9 a.m. to 3:30 p.m. We have an amazing keynote speaker coming from Maryland. She's a mother, a veteran, a licensed social worker, an author, a minister, and a suicide survivor. She will be sharing her story of hope. And we have 6 breakout sessions and a boxed lunch as well. Tickets are $20 a piece. That just helps us offset the costs of the lunches. So I should have brought flyers, but I forgot. I will email digital versions to you all. Hope you can make it and feel free to share with your communities. Thanks.
John?
That's me, sorry. I had nothing to report.
Trustee Kishner?
I attended the Meet Me in the Street event last night in American Canyon. It's a street fair that we have during the summer once a month. It's over for this year, but if you live in American Canyon or you're in the neighborhood next year, definitely come by. It's a really cool event put on by the American Canyon Chamber of Commerce. Valerie Zizek-Moraes did a great job putting the event together. I think it's its 2nd or 3rd year. And it was nice to see our college folks out there representing. Looks like they talked to lots of people. And it was nice to see our county supervisor as well, Bailey Ronco's out there. So I wanted to just comment on that. Thank you.
No report. Trustee Baker?
I just want to share that my 14-year-old, who is a new student at New Tech, yesterday became not only a high school student, but a college student, and he is very excited.
Good work, Mom. I don't have a report, but I just wanted to, and I know there's a whole team involved, but I just wanted to single out you, Jim, and your work on seeing the housing project construction completed and keeping it on budget and all the work and countless hours that you put into that. So with that, our announcement of future meetings, 9/12/24 will be a regular board meeting. And with that, I think I can see that at 7:20 we'll adjourn this meeting.